Yeah. This is Mr. Camerath coming to you live from the satellite of love. I got my bottle of Cavassier right here, and I'm going to be bringing you the soothing sounds of Impressionism all night long. Let's see. We are going to be talking a little bit about Monet, Renoir, Cassatt, and Degas, but pretty much we'll hit those artists more specifically later, and this is just a really general overview of Impressionism in general. And you might be thinking, but there's so many more artists than Impressionist artists than just those four, and you would be right. But I don't have an infinite amount of time, so I gotta make do. Alright, here we go. Impressionism. This is the grand overview. So Impressionism is it's this 19th century art movement. When I say 19th century, that means the 1800s for those of you playing at home. It began in Paris, so in fact it really is just this Parisian movement. Paris is absolutely blowing up at this point in time, at least in the art scene. And so it's this group of artists who are all working together in Paris. They're showing together in Paris. And when I say a loose association, I mean it's actually like a club where you can get in. So some people are excluded, some people are let in, but it's also they just get together. They go hang out at the mall and do some painting. But no, for real, they'll get together, share a bottle of wine, and paint each other. You know, it's very romantic. And so they're working together and they're showing together. In galleries, they're all basically getting rejected from the salon all the time, and so they got to show their work somehow. So they band together, form this group, and then they're working together. So originally, Impressionism was despised by the critics, loathed. They hated it. The critics, they hated it with the burning passion of 1,000 suns. So the name Impressionism actually comes from Monet work. Comes from the painting Impressions Sunrise. So when the art critic Leroy goes to the salon and he sees Impression Sunrise hanging up, he's infuriated by it. Just, what an insult to art! He just couldn't stand how terrible this painting was. So he writes up a review, just tearing it to shreds and just ripping on it, and explains it's just a bunch of impressionism. And so then the Impressionists, they took this and they liked it, and they ran with it. So unlike most art movements, which actually get named after the movement is over, the Impressionists, they went with this and they had their own little club, and they called themselves the Impressionists, and so soaking in, but Henry can't be allowed into the Impressionist group. So, all right. Like most art movements, especially more modern art movements, it started in painting, then later ends up spreading to sculpture, which you'll eventually see some Impressionist sculpture in later lectures. But then eventually even spread to music. So Impressionist music, the best way I can describe that is it sounds like an Impressionist painting. Honestly, you just gotta listen to it. And Impressionist literature, which I really am not too familiar with. I can only imagine that it sounds, that it's something about like the essays my 10th graders turn in. So, and we still today would call Impressionism art that's just that's the same kind of style, even though it's not necessarily made during the 19th century. But America loves Impressionism, and so we still have a ton of it going on. In fact, your grandma has a Impressionist painting hanging up, right, or Impressionist calendar hanging up right now in her kitchen, I promise. And here we have Impression Sunrise. I just thought I should include that so you actually knew what I was talking about when I said the painting that started it all, which is not necessarily actually true, but it's just quite the scandal when this painting was revealed. Alright, so I wanted to show you these and get your brains thinking for a little bit about how is this art. Here's a couple of Impressionist pieces. How is this similar or different to some of the stuff we've already seen, right? How is this like or unlike Baroque? or neoclassical, romantic, and realism? How did those different movements have effects on it? You might look at this and you might say, oh, obviously this totally even looks like it is a realist painting, right? And so just think about, and influences could be how things are similar, or they could be how things are different. Artists will rebel against a movement, and they clearly are affected and influenced by that movement, even when they're rebelling. So go ahead and pause it for just a second, and try and come up with a list of similarities and differences. Ready, pause. Ha! We're back. Alright, I'm sure you got all of these correct, so I'm just going to go ahead and boost your ego and pat you on the back for getting all of these. So here we go. So Baroque, when you look at some of this, you see, remember Baroque art was so interested in light, that emerging from the darkness, and we don't really have nearly the extreme contrast in value in Impressionism stuff, but we do have a good amount of it, because Impressionists were really interested in that play of light, which you'll see a lot here pretty shortly. When we talk about neoclassicism, actually was they're really turning away from neoclassicalism, really rebelling against it, we could even say. So turning away from those classics, trying to really embrace the avant-garde, the new, the fresh. Romanticism, really turning away from romanticism too, moving again away from that mountaintop experience, that's so dramatic and elaborate and amazing romantic, but embracing the more common, the real, trying to get that the everyday kind of a feel. Which you may even be thinking to yourself, oh, didn't Caravaggio do that some in Baroque? And you'd be like, yes. Yes, he did. Alright, realism. Here's where we see a lot of similarities, So we see that loosening of the formal painting techniques. So it's much looser, I guess is the way to say it. The handling of the paint is much looser. It's not so formal and dramatic and tight. Or I shouldn't even say dramatic, but ultra realism, hyper realism. So more visible brushwork. You can even see in the painting in the background. You can see all those brush strokes, right? So, and that's how realism was going, right? And they just took it and kept going farther. Realism had that appreciation for landscapes and started making genre scenes an acceptable thing. But again, since people hated realism, genre scenes still weren't necessarily that approved of. So, but the Impressionists liked it, and they also started being interested in that realism, it's just the whole idea of realism, that same kind of realism that realism was showing, that not elaborate, not unrealistic. They started looking for that slice of life. A few characteristics of Impressionism. We have the visible brush strokes. So if you look in the at this painting here, notice how you can see. Where's my laser? Oh, there you go. Notice how you can see all these brush strokes all over here, right? We have short and broken brush strokes. Not only are they visible, but look how tiny these brush strokes are. Visual blending of unmixed colors. So instead of the artist mixing everything up perfect and then painting it on perfectly and nice and neat and clean, they said, well, we'll get some kind of greenish water. Greenish blue water by putting in both blue and green, and maybe some yellow and some pinks and all kinds of different things, and eventually we start getting kind of that color of water. It all just blends together in your eyes anyways. We have that emphasis on light, so really keep that in mind. You'll see in some future paintings even more of that emphasis on light. Painted en plein air. And en plein air literally just means in plein air. It means outside. They painted it outside. They're really into painting outside, not locked up in the studio. So, and that ordinary subject matter. It's much less elaborate. It's just the ordinary, the plain Jane, boring. And really trying to capture the fleeting moment. And so that's why they painted outside, and why they cared so much about light. They just wanted to catch that quick split second of when the light reflected off of that bush right there, whatever it happens to be. So, techniques, how it was done. So these short, thick strokes of paint, and painted really quickly, way faster than anybody's ever painted before. Normally, it used to take weeks to months to years to finish paintings. Here these guys are putting these things out in a day or a few days. It's crazy. Nobody can understand it. And really what we'd say is impasto, right? So these thick, visible, textural brush strokes. And we said this before, but when colors are applied side by side with not much mixing, so it's not physical mixing, instead it's optical mixing, right? It's in your eye, in the face. Alright, grays and dark tones are made actually by mixing complements, and so they really were big on not ever using black. I can't say they never did, but very rarely. Usually dark violets or such instead. And they really painted wet on wet instead of all the layering that had originally been done. The normal way to paint is they'd try and crank it out in a matter of a couple of hours, and so they're painting in oils here, so the paint is still wet as they're putting paint on top of it. And if you remember when you guys were doing your oil painting, that's why things were starting to get kind of muddy, right? Let's see here. We already talked, they were not using glazes, which is, remember, those really thin layers, but instead they're painting on thick impasto and made it very opaque. You can really see through it, excuse me. And really interested in that natural light, capturing the natural light. Let's see here. In plein air, we already hit that, but that's just painting outside. Really care about seeing stuff, the natural light. Let's look at some of these paintings. Let's see here. So we have so in the salon that's hanging up, we have all these different paintings. We have neoclassical, right? Oh, everybody loves that, and it makes me feel so patriotic. And we have romantic. Oh, what a great moment. And we have more neoclassical and more romantic and Peter and what the crap is that, right? All of a sudden that's hanging up, and it's scandalous, people. You can see how that's so different and shocking and jarring. So let's see here. Let's actually take a look at some paintings now. Here we have Impression Sunrise. You can go ahead and pause it and try and name off some of the ways that you see these different techniques used. You see different, what am I trying to say? Past influences. So we have white water lilies. Look at all the light reflecting, right? It's such a strong light source coming from. This one's another really good example of that strong play of light, right? Look at how even down here we have all that super strong light coming. We got the strong shadows. It's a real good example of the visual mixing of color too. Just look at how this is all blending in your eyes. It's all these short and broken brush strokes. So get it, like needle in a haystack. Kind of funny. Alright, then we have Renoir, Nude in the Sun. So look at like the way the light is the way the light reflects off of her arm and off of her breasts. But then if you look in the background, it's just a mess back here, right? What is he even trying to show? I don't even get what she's standing on. This is just craziness. So that's even more crazy than realism. It makes no sense. Here we have Cassatt, actually. So notice here, who's interested in seeing a mother and a daughter, a genre scene? Pshaw, that's lame, right? But then look in the water, all that visual blending. Look in the water, all the short, broken brush strokes. Let's see here. Another Cassatt painting. Notice how soft and loose it is. It almost looks like realism, right? Alright, I wanted to put this one in because it's just a good example of the slice of life that I was talking about before, right? So Degas is really just trying to capture what people are used to seeing, just that everyday moment, right? And so it's not some big climactic romantic event. It's just two women working, doing their laundry, right? Working hard. So you might even be thinking, wow, that looks like a realist painting, and you would be right. It truly does. Alright, let's see here. Another one, just this very down moment, right? And Degas was really famous for doing these really down moments. I actually really love this painting. We'll talk a lot more about this later when we talk about Degas. Alright, here we have Dance Class by Edgar Degas. This is a nice one. Degas was just so good at capturing the down moment, right? So normally you think of the ballet as this giant climactic scene, but here Degas chooses instead to just show it's just a class. They're just practicing. This girl's not even on stage. She's just goofing around. This girl's talking to her friends. I mean, get what this girl is doing. And so And so Degas just is really good at capturing that low-key moment. So we'll talk a lot more about Degas, in fact about all these 4 artists more in the future. But for now, this is Mr. Camrath aboard the Satellite of Love, signing off. Good night.